Hello everyone, my name is Tom, and welcome to this quick chat where we talk about a specific topic in animation. Rick and Morty is back, everyone, and that includes all the good, the bad, and everything in between. Rick and Morty has made a major impact on the world of animation, not only because it's reached mainstream success through marketability, memeability, and the people uncomfortably identifying with Rick's narcissism, but also because it's done an incredible job at masquerading as a formulaic, one-off style series, while also sprinkling in hints of continuity. Sometimes it's less of a sprinkle and more of a slavering, but that's neither here nor there. So part of the show's message is heavily dictated by nihilism, the idea that we're all just specks in the universe and nothing actually matters. But maybe that too is an example of the show fundamentally masquerading as something it's not. So we have a pretty set status quo in the foundation of this show through the relationship of Rick and Morty, Richard and Mortimer, Doc and Marty. The dynamic is pretty straightforward. Morty is a naive and seemingly innocent, befuddled teenage boy, while Rick is a cynical super genius with a severely detached moral compass. Rick is treated like a cool, big, galaxy brain alpha male, while Morty is his often pathetic subordinate. And this is a formula that is simultaneously hammered in while being resisted by the character's own sense of free will, primarily Morty. The show itself has even poked fun at the fact that this is a formulaic dynamic by using the multiverse and citadel of Ricks, attempting to remove the individuality of these characters. They're a dime a dozen, and if one of them dies, they can easily be replaced. But the thing is, our characters are showing signs of growth, both positive and negative. Morty is in the middle of his formative years. He's growing up, and he's definitely not going to stay the same person, and none of the other Mortys in the multiverse can indicate how he'll end up. And all the Ricks and Mortys we see are the same age based on dialogue.
Maybe you should find a little faith, young man.
We're the same age! What's your name, young man? Rick, and I'm same age as me, I know.
And even if there were older Mortys, just looking at the variations between the Ricks and Mortys, seeing how drastically different Ricks from different universes with different experiences managed to turn out, I don't think it would be as simple as saying the older Mortys are this way, so that's how Morty will end up. Especially when our Rick is so different from the other Ricks in the fact that he's basically an enemy of the state, which communicates a weird symbolism for the character. Because we're being shown this nihilistic idea that our main characters don't actually matter because there are multiple versions of them. They're a dime a dozen, they're replaceable, but they also have this individuality that exists as the characters are on their own personal journeys that seem more important because of the fact that Rick refuses to conform to the Citadel. Even if he's not the only one, the fact that he exists, that evil Morty exists, and so many vastly different variations of the characters exist in the multiverse manages to invalidate the idea that the characters are replaceable, aren't special, and are on a set path with no sense of consequence. Our characters' traumas and experiences are more unique than the world implies. Tales of the Citadel is a great example of this duality because they show Mortys that deviate from the norm of what a Morty is, and Ricks who deviate from what Ricks are supposed to be. So we come back to our own Rick and Morty and realize that maybe everything does mean something. But why does Rick, the smartest man in the universe, refuse to believe or at least entertain that idea? And well, that's because despite Rick being incredibly intelligent and technically smart, he lacks emotional intelligence. Rick looks at things objectively, and that's how his mind works. He analyzes things and breaks them down, and it always leads to nothing. On an objective level, nothing matters. We are individual, inconsequential pieces of a giant universe that we have no way of comprehending just how giant it is. Love is nothing but a neurochemical con job, the same way that all emotions and interpersonal connections are when you break them down to a scientific level. And as humans, we are able to attach a perceived meaning to those things, so that those things can have value and give fulfillment to our lives, but Rick refuses. What this has done is lead Rick down a path of self-destruction, as he has done more than any other human being in the known universe, and yet he's been unable to find any type of meaningful fulfillment from it. If anything, it's given him an escape from the inability to form meaningful relationships with others, and the ability to create a facade of importance for those on the outside looking in. It's given him something to bond with his grandson over, because we know for a fact that despite his own resentment towards those feelings, he does love his grandson. Morty is the closest thing to a meaningful relationship Rick has, and while that's one of the only things that Rick has going for him, his narcissism, traumas, and overall toxicity are being passed down to Morty, which may or may not be something that Rick feels remorse for. What Rick's problems stem from is his inability to find meaning in anything because he is so emotionally stunted. He's numb to the everyday, so he's constantly chasing this high by putting himself in insane and dangerous situations and bringing his grandson along for the ride. Meanwhile, he neglects the very human parts of who he is, turning him into a very dysfunctional emotional person. Which is interesting because looking back at the Citadel, you have a lot of Ricks who are confined to the conventions of a society where intelligence isn't a defining characteristic for Ricks because they're all the same, with a few exceptions. A society where they can't just go off on their own adventures because by taking part in the society, they've sacrificed a bit of freedom in exchange for security. But this means that these are Ricks that don't have the option of running off and chasing something bigger, so they have to find meaning in the more mundane existence. So as a result, there's something different about these Ricks. There's a different sense of emotion there. And that doesn't make these characters less intelligent or even less likable, but they seem more present emotionally. Even if they aren't happier, they're more connected to what's around them, and they're able to find some sort of meaning in it. But our Rick has a massive ego and a ton of pride, and he would never want to put himself in a position where he can't rely on his intelligence. He has to be around other Ricks and actually develop social skills to function in that society. But also because our Rick isn't willing to step into a society like that where he needs to find meaning for himself. Because through the trauma of everything that he's experienced throughout the universe and his inability to form meaningful connections with others, the belief that none of it matters is his way of coping. So the idea of searching for a personal sense of meaning is something that Rick feels like he needs to reject. The fact that things do actually matter acts like an albatross to Rick, because the truth is on a purely objective level nothing matters. We're dust to the universe and nothing we do is going to impact anything beyond the bubbles of our insignificant existence. However, as humans, those bubbles are our universe, and being subjective creatures that survive off of perception alone, that gives us a perceived sense of purpose and meaning that acts as a double-edged sword. Because while Rick finds solace in saying nothing matters to free him from his demons and weaknesses, he can't escape his humanity. Rick's neglect of his humanity leaves him in a state where he can run and live his fantastic life, but anytime he stops, he has to face the reality of how unfulfilled and unhappy it's left him. As the show goes on, I think this is going to become more and more apparent as Rick runs out of crazy adventures to distract himself from the emptiness he feels inside, and as Rick puts Morty in more and more positions to see the world in the same nihilistic way, Morty, who is more emotionally developed than Rick, may be the one to stop and confront the fact that living a life where you run from all sense of purpose is actually a lot more miserable than smart. But as always, we want to know what you think. Does anything matter? Let us know in the comments below. Hit us up at Roundtable Vids on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or find me on Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram at TommyPQM. If you want to see more of me, be sure to check out Let's Talk with Tom. Of course, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like and share it with your friends. If you haven't already, please subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. To go above and beyond, you can click the join button down below, or you can pledge to us on Patreon. Links down below. As always, my name is Tom. I hope you have an awesome day, and I'll see you next time. See ya!